My dear countrymen, I have several times in the course of these letters mentioned the late Act of Parliament as being the foundation of future measures injurious to these colonies, and the belief of this truth I wish to prevail, because I think it necessary to our safety. A perpetual jealousy respecting liberty is absolutely requisite in all free states. The very texture of their constitution in mixed governments demands it. For the cautions with which power is distributed among the several orders imply that each has that share which is proper for the general welfare, and therefore that any further acquisition must be pernicious. Machiavel employs a whole chapter in his discourses to prove that a state to be long-lived must be frequently corrected and reduced to its first principles. But of all states that have existed, there never was any in which this jealousy could be more proper than in these colonies. For the government here is not only mixed, but dependent, which circumstance occasions a peculiarity in its form of a very delicate nature. Two reasons induce me to desire that this spirit of apprehension may be always kept up among us in its utmost vigilance. The first is this, that as the happiness of these provinces indubitably consists in their connection with Great Britain, any separation between them is less likely to be occasioned by civil discords if every disgusting measure is opposed singly, and while it is new. For in this manner of proceeding every such measure is most likely to be rectified. On the other hand, oppressions and dissatisfactions being permitted to accumulate, if ever the governed throw off the load, they will do more. A people does not reform with moderation. The rights of the subject, therefore, cannot be too often considered, explained, or asserted. And whoever attempts to do this shows himself, whatever may be the rash and peevish reflections of pretended wisdom and pretended duty, a friend to those who injudiciously exercise their power, as well as to them over whom it is so exercised. Had all the points of prerogative claimed by Charles I been separately contested and settled in preceding reigns, his fate would in all probability have been very different, and the people would have been content with that liberty which is compatible with regal authority. But he thought it would be as dangerous for him to give up the powers which at any time had been by usurpation exercised by the crown, as those that were legally vested in it. This produced an equal excess on the part of the people. For when their passions were excited by multiplied grievances, they thought it would be as dangerous for them to allow the powers that were legally vested in the crown as those which at any time had been by usurpation exercised by it. Acts that might by themselves have been upon many considerations excused or extenuated derived a contagious malignancy and odium from other acts with which they were connected. They were not regarded according to the simple force of each, but as parts of a system of oppression. Everyone, therefore, however small in itself, became alarming as an additional evidence of tyrannical designs. It was in vain for prudent and moderate men to insist that there was no necessity to abolish royalty. Nothing less than the utter destruction of monarchy could satisfy those who had suffered, and thought they had reason to believe they always should suffer under it. The consequences of these mutual distrusts are well known, but there is no other people mentioned in history that I recollect who have been so constantly watchful of their liberty and so successful in their struggles for it as the English. This consideration leads me to the second reason why I desire that the spirit of apprehension may be always kept up among us in its utmost vigilance. The first principles of government are to be looked for in human nature. Some of the best writers have asserted, and it seems with good reason, that government is founded on opinion. Custom undoubtedly has a mighty force in producing opinion, and reigns in nothing more arbitrarily than in public affairs. It gradually reconciles us to objects even of dread and detestation, and I cannot but think these lines of Mr. Pope as applicable to vice in politics as to vice in ethics. Vice is a monster of so horrid mien as to be hated needs but to be seen, yet seen too oft familiar with her face, we first endure, then pity, then embrace. When an act injurious to freedom has been once done and the people bear it, the repetition of it is most likely to meet with submission. For as the mischief of the one was found to be tolerable, they will hope that of the second will prove so too, and they will not regard the infamy of the last, because they are stained with that of the first. Indeed, nations in general are not apt to think until they feel, and therefore nations in general have lost their liberty. For as violations of the rights of the governed are commonly not only specious, but small at the beginning, they spread over the multitude in such a manner as to touch individuals but slightly. Thus they are disregarded. The power or profit that arises from these violations, centering in few persons, is to them considerable. For this reason, the governors, having in view their particular purposes, successively preserve a uniformity of conduct for attaining them. They regularly increase the first injuries, till at length the inattentive people are compelled to perceive the heaviness of their burdens. They begin to complain and inquire, but too late. They find their oppressors so strengthened by success, and themselves so entangled in examples of express authority on the part of their rulers, and of tacit recognition on their own part, that they are quite confounded. For millions entertain no other idea of the legality of power than that it is founded on the exercise of power. They voluntarily fasten their chains by adopting a pusillanimous opinion that there will be too much danger in attempting a remedy, or another opinion no less fatal, that the government has a right to treat them as it does. They then seek a wretched relief for their minds by persuading themselves that to yield their obedience is to discharge their duty. The deplorable poverty of spirit that prostrates all the dignity bestowed by divine providence on our nature, of course succeeds. From these reflections I conclude that every free state should incessantly watch and instantly take alarm on any addition being made to the power exercised over them. Innumerable instances might be produced to show from what slight beginnings the most extensive consequences have flowed, but I shall select two only from the history of England.